That afternoon in Seattle, the rain couldn't fall hard, just a fine mist like fog laying a thin gray sheen over Ballard's tin roofs and wet streets. I stood in the kitchen drying a porcelain plate rimmed with yellow chrysanthemums. Butter cookies and warm spices scented the air. I'd been up early to bake a batch of shortbread Jamie, my grandson loves, the little house cream walls, a window looking out onto a maple-shaded alley. Everything was warm enough, tidy enough, the order I bought with 30 years of ICU night shifts exchanged for an ordinary quiet life. Tonight was a family dinner. Thomas had texted, "Don't go overboard," but I still braised short ribs, simmered a pot of beef and red wine soup, and added an apple salad enough for 6. I set polished stainless cutlery, spread a white linen cloth, and put a bunch of yellow tulips I'd picked up at the weekend farmer's market, a small habit to keep the table from looking bare. I've always believed if you put enough care into a meal, people say fewer things that hurt. A car stopped at the curb. I didn't have to look to know it was Grace. She always parks at a slight angle in a rush. She came in, pulled back her hood, and her rain-dark hair was slicked to her temples. "Mom, what smells so good?" she laughed, giving me a quick hug, the hug of someone with too full a schedule, who still tries to save a shoulder for her mother. I was happy, but inside I was already making room for the space I saved for Kendall. Aaron arrived next, carrying Jamie. My son looked tired. He's the gentle type, patient enough for dental patients, short on words when stuck between his mother and his wife. Jamie tucked his face into his father's collar. His cheeks were pink from the cold, light brown curls springing everywhere. One look and my heart softened like butter on low heat. Kendall came in last. Beige raincoat hugged her frame, her hair in a high ponytail, and her heels clicking evenly on the wood. "Hi, Mom. Hi, everyone," she said, the smile placed just right, the voice perfectly polite. Kendall is pretty, speaks smoothly, and knows her best angles when she films her elevated minimalism clips. I once tried to believe that if I swallowed a little more someday, she'd see what I gave her son and child. But some things, the more you swallow, the more you turn yourself into a nameless object. Dinner started. I poured wine-ladled soup and piled warm bread into a wicker basket. Thomas, my husband, sat at the head of the table, eyes still glued to his phone, emails unanswered. "Hey, the least you could do is look up and praise the soup," I said, half teasing, half true. He glanced up and gave a stiff smile. "Yeah, smells great. You always get it right." Those words always fell square onto my tired back, a compliment that doubled as a sentence because it assumed I would always be this way. Jamie, of course, didn't sit still. He's at the age where he wants to touch everything. He reached for the shortbread I'd set aside just for him, eyes wide and round. "Okay, but let Grandma hold you for a bit first," I said, reaching out. Erin smiled and started to set him down in my lap. Kendall laid a hand on her husband's arm and cleared her throat. In that tiny pause, I felt the cold draft arrive. "Let me hold him," Kendall said, voice soft as mist. "Lucas. Jamie has been sensitive lately. He cries around older adults." The words slid out like a fine, polished needle and slipped right into that fragile part of my heart. The room went oddly silent. I heard the pendulum clock take slow steps and the rain patter on the eaves. Grace's spoon halfway to her lips froze and set it down very gently. Aaron glanced at me, blinked once, then lowered his eyes. Thomas cleared his throat as if to change the topic. "Ahem, the markets this week." Kendall kept smiling as if she'd just shared a neutral scientific fact with no malice. I set my napkin down, fussed with its meaningless fold, and tried to keep my voice even. "If you don't want me to, I won't hold him, but don't say it like that." Kendall still didn't look me in the eye. "I don't want him to cry." "Kids, you know, they react honestly." "It's fine, Mom, next time. Kids react honestly." I repeated it in my head like I'd swallowed a cold stone. So being old means frightening. The calluses on my hands, earned from nights suctioning phlegm for the dying, cradling cyanotic bodies, are now why my grandson should be kept away. Devotion has an expiration date, like a carton stamped on the lid. I looked at Aaron. My son looked lost, lips pressed thin, one hand rubbing Jamie's back reflexively. I remembered when he was little and feverish, and I held him all night, swapping warm cloths, counting every breath. When he went to college, I sold a small wedding ring, the only value in my jewel box to top off tuition. Some trades go untold because you think family doesn't keep score. "Eat while it's hot," Thomas said, peacemaking and clumsy. I nodded to what I'm not sure. The soup touched my mouth. I couldn't taste wine or rosemary. Beneath the rain, I heard a slight clink, something inside me falling and breaking in two. Dinner went on as if nothing had happened. Kendall talked about a brand that wanted a Scandi-style shoot with beige-toned table settings. She glanced around and mused. If we repainted your walls whiter and decluttered, your place would photograph beautifully. I smiled. In my head were the dark sweat crescents on Thomas's t-shirt when he installed the cabinets himself, the flower handprints Aaron and Grace left on the table years ago, the tiny scratches Jamie accidentally dug into a chair, each mark a heartbeat. Minimalism to Kendall means scrubbing away what offends the eye. To me, minimal never meant erasing. At dessert, I poured black tea. Kendall lifted her phone and snapped a quick shot of the table. Mom let me take pics of Jamie, okay? He gets overstimulated if too many people touch him. I didn't reach for the baby again. I watched him from a distance, hands clenched under the table, moving slowly like I was counting time. After I cleared most of the dishes, Grace volunteered to wash. Everyone got ready to leave. Aaron hugged me. Thanks, Mom. I nodded, wanting to say something, but what slipped through my teeth was only, drive safe. Kendall took, Jamie pulled on her coat and added the professional reminder, please don't be upset. I only want what's best for Jamie. I smiled, the kind of smile my face knows by heart after so many times whispering to myself, don't make it hard for them. The door closed. Emptiness swept the house like a cold gust off Puget Sound. Thomas went to his office with a late coffee. Grace stayed 10 extra minutes wiping the table until the wood shone again. She hesitated. Mom, earlier. I'm sorry I didn't know what to say. I put my hand over hers and patted it. It's okay. Go home. You have a meeting tomorrow. Alone, the rain sounded louder. I sat by the window. The yellow tulips had leaned toward the lamp. A chip of shortbread remained on the table, the tiny bites Jamie took like a missing pattern. A memory surfaced. My grandmother once said, when people call you by another name, old, annoying, and background, if you believe them, you'll become precisely that. Maybe I've thought it too long. I opened the cabinet and took out an old sketchbook. During my nursing years, I drew to keep from going crazy, the ferry dock, a corner of the Fremont Bridge, silhouettes under rain. I pulled a chair to the window and switched on the desk lamp. The pencil moved. The first faint lines appeared: a vacant chair, a knit shawl draped there, a fogged window, and outside a streak of light, maybe the lamp on a night boat crossing the bay. I didn't cry. At my age, tears are precious, worth saving. But something in my chest that had lain obediently still shifted. No thunderclap, no drama. Just the compass needle is taking a small new bearing. At 11, Thomas peeked out. You should sleep. I'm taking the car in tomorrow. I nodded. You go ahead. He hesitated half a second, then turned back in. We've lived side by side long enough to know when fewer words are kinder. I stayed a while longer. Kendall's sentence kept replaying, but each stroke on the paper grew darker, muffling it. I thought of Jamie. Children react honestly, true, but so do adults. We react the way we're treated. If I keep retreating, people will keep advancing. If I stand still, they'll walk through me without asking. I set down the pencil and studied the sketch. I knew I'd ink the rest, use bolder lines. And not just on paper. On the porch, the rain had thinned. Traffic from the avenue hummed into a steady line of sound. I turned off most lights, leaving the small golden desk lamp. Before heading to bed, I opened the back door and drew a long, cold breath, wet wood soil, tulips, the smell of alive things. I understood this much tonight. I won't wait for others to remind me I exist. I will remind myself. If you're following Maggie's story, a woman who gave too much and is about to learn to stand up for herself, share your thoughts below. Have you ever suffered a polite insult in your family? Follow the channel and share the video with someone who needs the reminder. Our dignity doesn't have an expiration date. I woke in the night without knowing why. Rain tapped lightly on the eaves. The clock read 4:12 a.m. Thomas slept beside me, breath steady like a familiar refrain. I sat up, wrapped a knit shawl around my shoulders, and cracked the curtain. The street outside was slick, an empty lamplight casting gold over the sidewalk and winking in rain puddles like old memories glinting. Yesterday's paper is still open to the North Seattle housing market. I remembered Kendall saying something about expanding our living space, by which she meant moving to a new area, maybe selling my house to leverage the equity. I listened and pretended not to understand. There are many ways to push someone out of your life. Sometimes you only need a gentle voice and a good plan for everyone. I went downstairs and switched on the little yellow kitchen light. Stale coffee scented the air. I pulled paper and pen, a habit from my nursing days. When my head gets too loud, I write October 17th. Nothing special, just replaying that line, Jamie cries around old people. It could be adults who scare children. I'm the one afraid of silence. I folded the note into my sketchbook. Then I remembered Carlos, the boy from number 25, who'd said he'd fix the damp outdoor outlet. He's a skinny, quick, polite kid with a ready smile. His mother, Maria, was widowed young. Maybe that's why both of them know how to care in small, warm ways. At 7, as Thomas left, a knock sounded. Carlos stood there, hair still wet, hoodie damp, tool bag in hand. "Too early, Ms. Maggie," he asked. "No, come in. I've got fresh cookies." He smiled, shy, friendly. At 16, he sees adults with a steadier gaze than many adults. While he crouched by the outlet, I sat on the step and poured 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Are you doing okay?" The question caught me. Not many at home ask me that, at least not sincerely. I smiled. "I'm fine. I have a knee ache from the rain." He didn't push, just nodded like he knew sometimes fine covers an ocean of fatigue. Carlos told me about his mom, Maria, who works nights at a shoreline nursing home. She says older folks need someone to listen, ma'am, no need to say much. I smiled. At the nursing home I'd worked in, I held many hands as people left silently. A warm hand was all they needed. I live among blood family and sometimes feel lonelier than I ever did. By noon, after Carlos left, a message from Grace arrived. Mom Kendall said you might be too sensitive. She didn't mean anything. Please don't misunderstand. I stared at the line for a long time. Something inside me slipped cold and sharp. I typed, "I'm not mad at anyone, don't worry," then deleted it. I hit seen. I chose not to play the peacemaker for the first time in years. In the afternoon, a thin sun threaded the rain. I went out back to pick chrysanthemums to dry. Wet earth mixed with floral scent brought my mother to mind. She used to say, "When you're belittled, don't answer immediately. Be quiet, quiet, until they must ask what you're thinking. Maybe it's time I learned the right kind of silence." Thomas got home late. He took off his shoes and opened the fridge. No dinner. "Not tonight," I said. "I've eaten." He nodded, asked nothing more. For years, I'd turned acts of service into everyone else's habit. Now that I'd stopped, the house felt lacking. I didn't want to patch that lack anymore. Afterward, I turned on the lamp and sorted the bills Aaron had asked me to hold on to. Lines of numbers, credit cards, student loans, and an online purchase from Kendall's card note, PR event business expense. I didn't grasp everything, but my gut said something was off. The phone rang. "Aaron, I'm sorry about yesterday, Mom," Kendall spoke out of turn. "I'll talk to her." "No need," I said. "I'm not angry, I'm just sad everyone was silent." He paused. I heard a tiny sigh through the line. "I'm slammed. I'll come by when I can." "Okay, I'll wait." However, I didn't know what I wanted to wait for. I turned on the TV for noise. The evening news showed a small fire in Fremont. Watching those flames flicker felt like watching my home. No one notices it's burning because the lights are still on, and there's still laughter. I walked the living room. The lamp passed over the frames, Aaron's graduation, Grace's wedding, Thomas Young in a white shirt. I'm off to one side in every photo, clutching flowers, smiling just enough. In none am I centered. That may be my proper place in their lives. I stopped at Jamie's photo, Dimple's deep gaze open. I touched the glass. "Sweet boy, Grandma doesn't blame you. You're only crying because the adults haven't learned gentleness. Sleep wouldn't come." A cold draft from the Puget seeped through the window frame. I opened my sketchbook. Yesterday's lines were still there, the empty chair, the knitted shawl. I added a door opening to the sea-interlaced waves like the breath of someone waking from a long sleep. Change hadn't arrived, but the seed had cracked. At dawn, I went to the yard. The sky was still gray, but a thin, bright seam sat on the horizon. I picked fallen yellow leaves from the steps, my hands trembling slightly, but not weak. A knock, 3 short, 1 long. Carlos. He held up a warm paper bag from my mom. She says if someone does a lot for others and gets little back, they should at least have good pastries as a reward. I laughed for the first time in days. "Thank you, both of you. The rain's lighter today, huh?" "Yes, ma'am." "What are you doing today?" I thought. "I'll probably repaint the small room for more light." He nodded, pleased. "Nice. Don't do it alone, I'll help." When the door closed, I stood in the living room and looked around beige walls, years of faint stains. the pendulum clock that had stopped last night. Everything was quiet, as if waiting for a new start. I took a small brush and laid the first coat of white. The new paint smell was acrid. Strangely, I felt lighter. The wall would dry in hours, but inside me something dried instantly the waiting. I brewed tea and sat by the window. In the far-off rain, I heard my line echo back. If I stand still, people will walk through me. And this morning I stepped a little the first step toward not being invisible. 3 days after painting the room, the smell still lingered. It threaded through the morning coffee, the damp Seattle air, and the odd feeling I had each time I crossed the doorway. The white wall bounced what little light came through the window, making the small room feel bigger. I'd hung my sketch, the empty chair, in the center, still simple pencil, but this time I'd drawn a streak of light across the glass like a small promise to myself. Since then, I've been waking earlier. I brew coffee just for me, no second cup for Thomas. He woke later and looked unsure, seeing me already reading. "You're up early," he mumbled. "I'm used to it," I said. I no longer explained much. I just smiled polite like two people sharing a rental. Thursday, Grace stopped by with lunch. She'd just left a meeting, hair tied back, white blouse speckled with rain. Kendall's in a mood live streaming some new product, probably till late, she said, unpacking boxes. Aaron's, buried. I kept quiet for a moment. "Do you think Kendall's okay?" Grace shrugged. "I don't know. She's slick, but sometimes she feels cold, like everything she does has an angle." I smiled and served her salad. "Not everyone can live without armor, Grace. Wear it too long, though, and you forget what you're afraid of." She looked at me with surprise and tenderness, as if seeing a part of me she'd missed before. "You've changed," she said. "Good or bad?" "Just different," she said. "But it's good." The words warmed me. For years, I'd lived as someone else's habit. Now I felt myself taking a shape. That afternoon, I headed out for more paint. Rain again. Seattle's rain isn't fierce, only relentless enough to tire you. Driving back, I spotted Kendall outside a Fremont Market phone to ear voice tight. I meant to avoid her, but she saw me. Ms. Maggie. She raised her voice, smiling as if nothing were wrong between us. What a coincidence. I nodded. "Groceries." "Yeah. I need a few things for tonight's shoot. You know how busy I am now." She talked quickly, then looked me over. "You look well. More free time lately? I'm retired," I said evenly. "Right. I worry you'll get lonely. Jamie's so active now I can send videos if you want." "But you don't do TikTok, right?" I gave a small smile. "No, I still prefer real people to screens." Her smile stuttered. "You're very traditional." Her traditional cut is clean and cold. I didn't react. As I turned away, I heard her whisper into the phone. "I swear if she can't mind her place, I won't let her near my kid." Quiet, but not calm enough. I stood there a moment, watching people pass. Rain thickened, blurring circles on the pavement. Inside, I didn't feel anger, just a deep ache, like a string pulled so tight it can't sing. I didn't cook that night toast with cheese, old music radio. Thomas looked at me, unsettled. "No dinner." "Not today," I said. "Make yourself something or a can. I need a break." He went quiet. It must have seemed strange years, and I'd never said I needed a break. Once he left the room, I opened the packet of bills Aaron had left. Looking closer, I found overlapping charges between Aaron's card and Kendall's supplemental card, jewelry designer bags, on days she'd said her income had been cut. My morning suspicion sharpened truth shimmering under her gloss. I don't want to meddle in my son's marriage, but I can't play blind either. I remembered when Thomas and I were young, we argued, but at least I knew he wasn't lying to me. I see only fog in Aaron's house now, with a small child in the middle, not yet knowing whom to trust. The next morning, I met Carlos watering his yard. He handed me a school newspaper with his article. I got published Invisible People in the City. I read the lead he wrote about older neighbors living alone, who are only remembered on holidays or donation drives. "It's good," I said. "I've felt invisible too." He looked at me. "But you're not invisible anymore." I smiled. "Halfway." He paused. "Are you sad because of your family?" I rested my hand on the newly painted rail. "Of course. But sadness doesn't kill, it just helps you sort what's worth carrying. And what's not worth it, you throw it away. No, you don't throw it away, you stop carrying it." He nodded like he understood. A child's answer eased me more than 100 adult conversations. That evening, Aaron called. "Mom, dinner this weekend with Kendall. We need to talk." Okay, I said. I'll be there. I hung up uneasy. It wouldn't be simple. But I wasn't afraid anymore. When you've been hurt to the end, what's left is calm. I spent the evening picking a gift for Jamie, a hand-drawn whale book. On the first page I wrote, "For Jamie, so you'll know silence can say I love you." That night I dreamed of the sea. I stood on white sand, waves up to my knees, a small figure far off running toward me, laughing. I called Jamie, but the wind carried it away, only waves and the pale streak I often sketch. At dawn, light thinned the sky. I opened the window. Cold air, smelling faintly of a far ocean, came in. Tomorrow would be hard, but I was ready not as a yielding mother, but as a woman who finally knows how to stand in a storm. Saturday afternoon, Seattle looked sullen, the clouds like a gray scarf thrown over the red brick rooftops. I chose a pale blue sweater and brought a small gift box for Jamie. On the drive to Aaron's, I felt I would meet a piece of old memory, a part I used to belong to, but now only watched from outside. Aaron and Kendall's house sat on Queen Anne Hill, white walls, black-painted wooden door, a trellis of roses around the porch. I parked, cut the engine, and took a long breath. The lavender by the steps perfumed the air, sweet and sharp. Kendall opened the door. She wore a beige satin dress, hair up, lips, a soft red. "You're here. Come in." Her voice was light, but her eyes held no warmth. I nodded and held out the gift box. "I got Jamie a picture book. Thank you." She said, "I'll put it in his room," then went straight upstairs. Her heels struck the wood in a calm, even rhythm. Aaron came out of the kitchen, a strained smile on his face. "Mom, I'm sorry to ask you over like this. I want to smooth things out." "I didn't come to fight," I said. "I came to listen." Dinner was classic, Kendall immaculate, perfect, but bloodless. Every dish is arranged like a magazine spread: roast chicken with glaze, arugula salad with walnuts, and a baguette sliced into uniform coins. Sitting at the table, I felt like a client at a showcase more than a mother at a family meal. Jamie sat in his high chair, eyes bright, grin bursting when he spotted me. "Grandma," he squealed. A slight sound, but it melted me. I reached for him and he came back. Kendall was quicker, lifting him and turning away. "Eat first, Jamie. Let Grandma start." The words were light, but they drew a line across the table. I didn't react. I cut a slice of bread and quietly raised it to my mouth. Throughout the meal, Kendall talked about work, new campaign, new partner, the fatigue of modern womanhood, always balancing everything. Aaron nodded, eating and glancing at me as if to say, "Please don't escalate." I sat still, her voice beating time, pausing to adjust her phone or snap the food. Near the end, Kendall set down her knife-light voice iron core. "I want to talk about when you see Jamie." Aaron set his glass down, looked at her, then at me. Kendall continued, saying, "He's still small and compassionate. You should see him less for a while until I feel ready. I'm only worried about his psychology." The room congealed. I heard the spoon tap the plate. The wall clock ticked. "You're afraid he'll cry," I said evenly. "Or afraid someone will see what you're hiding." She flinched. A chill flashed in her eyes. "What are you saying? I'm talking about spending purchases on the supplemental card," I said, holding her gaze. "And about using work to drain your husband's savings." Heavy as a wet blanket, the air sagged. Aaron turned to me, eyes wide. "Mom, what are you even talking about?" "I'm saying what I saw," I said quietly. "You asked me to hold some bills, remember?" I looked. "You deserve to know if your house is built on trust or debt." Kendall laughed high and hollow. "Absurd! Who fed you rumors? No one. Numbers. Numbers don't lie." She stood. Her voice trembled. "You have no right to interfere in our marriage." "Maybe not," I said. "But I have the right to protect my grandson from being used as a prop." Aaron stood between us, flustered. "Enough. Mom! Kendall, sit down. We'll talk calmly." Kendall drew a breath and sat, but her face slipped from its mask. "You know your mother," snapped Aaron. "She has to control everything. I can't take it." I didn't answer her. I looked straight at my son. "If you want me quiet, fine. But before that, look at me like you did at 10. You once said, 'Mom, I won't let anyone make you cry.' I don't need protecting now. I need you to look." A long pause. Aaron lowered his head, hands clasped. "Kendall, I need to review the accounts. You don't trust me. I want the truth. If you want to destroy this family—" "Congratulations," she shot back. She scooped Jamie up and went upstairs. Footsteps quick, the door slamming hard. Silence. Aaron sat, hand to his forehead. "Why did you do that, Mom?" Because I've kept quiet too long, I said. Every time I was belittled, I told myself, for the peace. What peace if only one person pays? He said nothing, but his slight nod told me he wouldn't run. When I left, thunder rolled. I drove over the Aurora Bridge. Rain lashed the windshield into long streaks. My head held no triumph, only emptiness. I thought of Jamie, of his little face when he yelled Grandma. I feared Kendall would keep her word. It might be long before I'd hold him again. The fear didn't make me step back. I pulled to the curb with a distant view of Lake Union street lamps stitching the water with gold thread. I cracked the window. The cold wind bit. I closed my eyes to the rain and the steady drum of my own heart. Late, I got home. Thomas was still up with sports news on. You okay? Fine, I said, but tired. He clicked the TV off. I know you're not lying. But do you think you went too far? Too far compared to whom? He didn't answer. Some wounds don't bleed, I said softly. If you don't bandage them yourself, they rot. Do you get that? He nodded. I do. I don't know what to do. Do nothing if you must, I said. Just don't pretend it's fine. I headed for the stairs. Behind me, he called, I'm sorry, Maggie. I don't need an apology, I said without turning. I need to be seen. I didn't sleep. In the studio, the white wall glowed. Through the window, lightning split the sky. I took a pen and added a low horizon, the sky tearing dim light on a small woman in the rain. I didn't know if she was me or if every woman was told to be silent for fear of troubling others. Storm gusts whistled. My mind felt still. Some storms don't come to destroy, they come to wash rot away. And I knew I'd passed the point of no return. In the morning, the rain had stopped. The first thread of light slipped through the blinds onto the polished floor. The house was so quiet I could hear water heating in the kettle and a draft sliding past the porch plants. Thomas had left early, on the table a note at the shop back at noon. I made coffee, trying to befriend the stillness. Something in the air had changed, an unnamed hush, as if the cords between me and my loved ones were loosening bit by bit. My phone buzzed. Erin, Mom Kendall has moved in with her mother for now. We need time. I reread it several times. Not relief, not joy, just a heaviness, like watching a boat slip off in fog, knowing it must go and still aching. I typed, do what you think is right. Don't let Jamie feel the tension. Then folded the phone and sat quietly for a long while. In the afternoon, Grace dropped by with groceries and new paint. I heard Erin and Kendall are having trouble, she said softly. Are you okay? I am, I said. But I worry about Jamie. A child shouldn't be wedged between adults. She sat across from me, eyes deep and gentle. Mom, you did what needed doing. Kendall's not wrong about everything, but it would have gotten worse if you'd stayed silent. I looked at my daughter and felt both pride and sorrow. She's forthright and quiet, always watching. Perhaps she understands me better than I realized. People only appreciate silence after it's gone. I was silent so long that everyone thought I couldn't hurt. Grace took my hand, voice tight. I've never heard you talk this much. I smiled. Before, I feared that if I spoke, everyone would leave me. Now I know if someone leaves because I told the truth, they never stayed in the first place. 3 days later, Kendall called, her voice dry. You happy now? You got what you wanted? No, I said. Breakups never make anyone happy. Then you should know he's sleeping on the couch. He won't even talk to me. You didn't make him stronger, you made him weak. I kept quiet. She breathed hard into the line. I don't want to argue, I said, but ask yourself, what is it you think you're winning? She laughed coldly. You're old. You wouldn't understand. I'm protecting myself and my son by cutting him off from the one who loves him most. Silence. Then she hung up. I set the phone down and exhaled a long breath. Not from anger, but pity. A woman losing herself in a game she thinks she controls. That afternoon, I worked the yard. Carlos swept leaves, hoodie, dirty broom in hand. Need help? Water those pots for me, I said. I'll do the rest. We worked without talking. When done, he sat on the step, wiping sweat. Mom says old folks get sad because nobody asks, are you happy today? So, are you happy? I laughed. Not exactly happy, but peaceful. Peace is good. Mom says adults need that. It was light as rain. The tulips were budding water beating on leaves. Peace, yes, but peace is also a kind of courage, the courage not to run from what you've chosen to face. That evening, Aaron came by. Can I stay a few days? Your room's the same, I said. He sat on the couch, hands interlaced. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. Since Kendall left, I know how much I let her define everything, even how close you and I could be. I poured tea. If you live in a house where every decision is built on someone else's fear, you'll forget what you want. He looked down. I need a marriage counselor, maybe a lawyer. I didn't speak. I saw him grow for the first time in years, not for money earned, but for taking responsibility as things fell apart. Upstairs, he went to bed. The white studio wall glowed. In the little mirror by the door, a hairline crack I hadn't fixed since last year doubled my face under the lamp. No longer the woman bent at family meals, quietly swallowing barbed politeness in my eyes, a new light not blinding but clear. Late Thomas came home. He stood at the door. Aaron's here. Yes. He needs quiet. He nodded. I ran into Kendall. She told me to make you stop before you lose your son. I told her, she's not losing her son, she's finding herself. I looked at my husband. He's never been good with lines like that. I saw remorse, or maybe recognition late but real. Thank you, I said. I didn't do much. He answered, I'm just scared you'll be gone before I understand how long you've endured. I said nothing. We hadn't drifted apart from fights, but from silence, now that silence was being patched piece by piece. Night came slowly. I sat on the porch and watched city lights shimmer through the mist. A stray cat slid across the bricks wind a little rain. Seattle, patient and damp, was keeping its private sorrow. In it I heard something else, the sound of life shifting. Not everything broken must be lost. It only needs to be faced and set down where it belongs. I closed my eyes and let rain sink with my heartbeat. I wasn't afraid of tomorrow for the first time in a long time. Monday morning rain fell like a thin curtain over the city. I was straightening the easel when the phone rang. Aaron's voice was hoarse, ragged. Jamie. Fell. We're at Harborview. I froze, then grabbed my raincoat and keys. Ballard to downtown is just over 6 miles, but it felt like a century that morning. Rain smeared the windshield. Traffic lights blurred. Horns wailed like wet ghosts. Aaron sat in the hall at the hospital, shirt-soaked, eyes red. He fell in the preschool parking lot, he said. Not serious, but the doctor wants observation. I put a hand on his shoulder. Where's Kendall? She's in X-ray with him. A moment later, the door opened. Kendall stepped out, her face pale and her hair plastered to her forehead. Seeing me, she halted. Why are you here to see how my grandson is? I don't need you here. I didn't come for you, I said quietly. Aaron slid between us. Enough. We're all worried. Kendall turned to the window, tears sliding unchecked. I went in. Jamie lay on a small bed, bandage on his little hand, eyes drowsy. When he saw me, he smiled faintly. Grandma. I sat and stroked his hair, voice shaking. I'm here. It's okay. A nurse came in. Just a mild sprain, no fracture. But 24 hours observation to be safe. I thanked her. Outside, Kendall stood by the glass, staring into the rainy courtyard. It took a few seconds, she said, voice raw. He let go. I was answering a client call. It happened so fast I couldn't breathe. I stood. At that moment, I didn't see an arrogant woman. I saw a mother in a panic, her sliver of peace smashed. No one wants this, I said. You don't have to be strong all the time. She looked at me, eyes wet. Are you still angry with me? I'm not angry, I'm sorry. Sorry we loved the same child, but chose ways that made him fear adult love. Kendall lowered her head. A tear hit the floor. By afternoon, the clouds thinned, and Jamie perked up. Aaron took him to the hospital garden. Kendall and I sat in the lobby cafe. Coffee mingled with antiseptic. She spoke first. I thought you hated me. I said. I don't understand you. You say you work to maintain an image and support Jamie, but a child doesn't need a perfect mother, he needs a real one. She gave a small, tired laugh. You'd get it if you grew up where applause only came with perfect scores. I don't know any other way to be seen. I was quiet. It's not exactly empathy, it's more tenderness for someone wrestling old ghosts. Now I'm afraid of losing everything, she whispered. Aaron, Jamie work. No one loses everything, I said. You only pay to learn what's worth keeping. We sat. For the first time between us, the silence wasn't a front line. That evening, Aaron brought Jamie to my place to rest. He slept early. I pulled the blanket up and went to the porch. Rain had stopped. The wind carried salt from the Puget. Thomas joined me, hands in pockets. I heard he said, You handled it well. Handled I did nothing. I listened. Sometimes that's enough, he said. I looked at him. Remember the first time we rushed Grace in with a fever? Yeah. You cried the whole time. You told me just believe she'll be fine. I said that to Kendall today and I sounded like someone else. Maybe you've moved through your fear, he said. Maybe I smiled, but I'm still afraid of tomorrow collapsing. Let it, he said. So long as you don't collapse with it. The next morning, Aaron dropped Jamie off at school. Thanks, he said. I don't know how to restart, but I'll try. Don't try to make it like before I said. Start from what you want. I returned to the studio. In my canvas, grandmother, and the mist sea. I added a small figure beside the woman, a child holding a kite smiling in the haze. I didn't know the ending, only that my hand no longer shook. At noon, the doorbell. Kendall, no makeup, gray sweater, tired eyes. Do you have time for you? Yes, I said. She set a folder on the table. My new contract. I removed family influencer. I'm taking a break. Are you sure that job meant everything to you? I need air, she said, and to know who I am off camera. Courage isn't standing center stage, I said. It's knowing when to walk off. She smiled faintly. I learned that from you. After she left, I opened the window. The air still held rain and fresh paint. The small house had a child's laughter, the warmth of a man steeping tea, and the aftertaste of a storm, the kind inside people. I wrote in my journal, no wound heals by itself, no rain lasts forever. Today I saw sunlight in the eyes of a daughter-in-law I once feared I'd never understand. The clock struck 10. The wind rose softly at the eaves. Somewhere out there the city breathed, and so did I, slowly alive. The following week, the cold set in. Magnolia's Hill wore morning fog so thick the maples looked half dissolved into the sky. I woke, made coffee, turned on the radio talk of early snow, a low, steady voice, cinnamon-scented apple tea simmering on the stove. Jamie still slept in his little room. Aaron was back at the clinic. Since Kendall stepped away from the company and social media, the air between them seemed calmer. Fewer clipped calls, fewer stacked accusations. Only silence, the tired kind that heals. That morning, folding laundry, I heard the bell. Kendall stood there, thinner hair loose, unpainted face, a small bag of pastries in hand. Hi, Mom, she said, voice so soft it felt like sound might break something. Here to see Jamie. Yes. I cleared it with Aaron. I let her in. The kitchen was bright and gentle, apple tea steam and light. She paused before my canvas grandmother in the mist sea. She touched the frame. Beautiful. It looks like it's breathing. It's not finished, I said. I'm still looking for the color of peace. Maybe it's light gray, she said, the color between rain and sun. We looked at each other. For the first time, something like listening. Jamie woke and squealed when he saw her. She bent and hugged him. He laughed, arms around her neck, as if there had been no days apart. I stood aside, warmed and heavy. Children forgive more easily than we do. They haven't learned to defend with resentment. Kendall stayed for lunch. I made pumpkin soup and toast, simple, warm, fragrant. As I set a bowl down, she said quietly, I'm sorry. I looked up. The sentence wasn't loud, but stopped all the house's sounds. Sorry for what? For hurting you and Aaron. For fear and control. I thought perfection would earn love. The harder I tried, the lonelier I got. I sat, hands trembling. I'm not blameless. My silence cut too. When I didn't speak, all you heard was judgment. She bowed her head. If we could start over, would you give me a chance? I glanced at Jamie, busy with toast crumbs sprinkled everywhere. We restart every day, I said. As long as there's morning light, we can try again. She cried, the tears quiet and real. Thank you. In the afternoon, we sat on the porch, scarves around our necks. When she opened the door to go, fog curled in with the smell of old rain. I put a hand on her shoulder. Don't rush back out if the streets are wet. Stay a little longer. She nodded. I will. We watched Jamie draw with crayon spirals and squiggles. He held up his paper proud. Grandma, this is the ocean. What's this you standing there? I laughed. Grandma's too small, because the ocean's big. Kendall watched him, love in her eyes. I wished for a childhood like his, she said. Someone beside me, quiet but loving. You might be giving Jamie exactly that, I said without noticing. That night, Aaron came home after work. Did we have visitors? Yes, Kendall and Jamie. He startled, then nodded. Thanks. I know forgiveness isn't easy for you. I didn't forgive, I said. I won't pass my mother's fear on to the next generation. He stared at the floor. I want to start again. But I'm afraid I can't believe anymore. Believe in who in us. Everything feels like a wall with a crack. No matter the patch, you still see it. Cracks aren't bad, I said. They remind you that what broke can still be held. Look through them, the world warps, but it's truer. He exhaled. I'll try. Late, I couldn't sleep. In the kitchen, I poured water. Fog pressed close. Next door's light flickered like a small fire through the mist. I thought of the years I'd yielded until I vanished, terrified that quiet would keep a house standing. Now I understand quiet doesn't equal peace. In the studio, the canvas was nearly done. I added one last detail in the distance. Two figures, a young woman and a child, hand in hand, walking toward the light. The ink was still wet. I sat and watched. The painting held it all: loss, forgiveness, the salt sting of pain, but no hatred. Morning. A text from Kendall. We're taking Jamie to the museum today. Will you come? I smiled. Yes. I'll bring my camera and take his first photo beside a real painting, not a phone screen. At the museum, Kendall and Jamie stood under a large canvas swaths of blue, violet, and gold. Mom, it looks like your painting, Jamie chirped. That's right, Kendall said. Your grandma is an artist too. Behind them, I pressed the shutter once. In the frame, the child, his mother, and the light from the glass dome fused into one. I didn't take another. I let the moment stand proof that forgiveness doesn't need to be spoken, only sustained, quiet, and stubborn, like an underground spring. That night, Thomas looked up from his paper. Out all day, I went looking for a bit of light, I said. He smiled. I see light in you. We said nothing more. Wind whispered at the window. I leaned into his shoulder. The distance that used to stretch felt as close as breath. Outside, the city was drowned in fog, but the mist didn't make me feel lost this time. It softened everything, as if life, after years of hard edges, was finally learning gentleness with itself. Morning in Magnolia was cold and dim fog, so thick the hill outside my window nearly faded into air. A ferry horn carried across the inlet, long and low. I made coffee and sat by the window. On the table lay an invitation from the Seattle Senior Artists Association. Carlos sent it with a note. You should submit it. Grandmother and the Mist Sea needs to be seen. I held the paper and smiled. For years I'd only painted for myself, and I never thought of letting a canvas leave this house. Fear, maybe, of judgment of people seeing the shards I'd hidden. Now the fear didn't choke me, just a shadow behind. I called Grace. Free this afternoon? You want a ride? She laughed. I want to register for an exhibition. A surprised breath. Then, Mom, I'm proud of you. I went quiet, my throat hot. Some words are simple, but arrive after a long wait. Grace chattered about work in the car, Aaron and Kendall tried counseling, and Jamie took to drawing like Grandma. I listened, both warmed and oddly moved, as if after years my family was relearning how to exist together. At the association, the young clerk took my forms. Would you like to use an artist's name? I thought a moment. No, I'm Evelyn Moran. That night I pulled the canvas back out and glazed a few pale strokes at the horizon, dawn's thin light, a reminder that storms pass. 2 days later, an unexpected call from Kendall. Would you watch Jamie this weekend? Aaron and I want to go to therapy together. Of course, I said. Thank you, she added, then hesitated. Do you still resent what I said? Nobody gets through life without misspeaking, I said. What matters is speaking again with action. She laughed softly, tired but honest. I'm trying. On the weekend, Jamie ran to the garden with his paint box. Grandma, I want to paint the ocean like you. I spread a small drop cloth and handed him a brush. Okay, but look closely. The ocean isn't only blue. What else? The color of clouds wind and whoever is standing before it. He frowned and then dabbed a pale purple. My ocean's a little sad but pretty. Children see the world truly painting their sorrow without hiding it. During his nap, the doorbell rang, Carlos holding a small bouquet. I heard you got into the show, he grinned. Because of you, I said. Without a nosy neighbor, my paintings would still be under the bed. He looked toward the distance. Everyone needs someone to see them. And you, I asked? Who sees you? You do, he smiled. Every time you tell a story, I grow a bit. A breeze carried the scent of white chrysanthemums over the fence. I realized I wasn't as alone as last year's afternoons. On exhibition day, I wore a beige knit dress and Grace's silk scarf. Thomas drove me. Aaron and Kendall came too. Kendall held Jamie's hand. His other hand held mine, a picture that would have seemed strange once, now natural enough to make my throat ache. The gallery was small and bright. When the lights hit grandmother and the mist sea, I heard a whisper behind me. My mom painted that Grace's voice low enough to tip my heart. Kendall stood before the canvas for a long time. At last she said, "Now I see why you chose gray. It's not sad, it's breathing." I nodded, lips trembling. "Thank you for looking, Grandma's famous," Jamie crowed. We laughed, even Aaron, easy and unstrained. Looking at them, I felt myself stand in something fragile and real, a thin sunbeam threading the Seattle fog. That night, a text from Kendall: "I've never seen you as beautiful as today, not because of the dress or the painting, but because you looked free." I reread it. Free, two simple syllables I had spent half a life finding. A week later, the association notified me that my painting would be printed in Women in Silence, a collection of women who found their voices after 60. I smiled through a sting of tears. That evening on the porch, Thomas leafed through the magazine. "I don't think you were ever really silent," he said. "People just refuse to listen." I leaned on his shoulder. "What about you?" "I'm learning." Fog swept up from the bay, wrapping the porch. In the window glass, I saw not just my face, but everyone I loved. Grace, Aaron, Kendall, Jamie, Carlos, Thomas, soft lights blending. I whispered where no one could hear. "At last I am seen not through someone else's eyes, but my own." I understood then forgiveness isn't forgetting, refusing to let pain define you. Winter came to Seattle quietly. Thin rain traced the window in long seams. I sat in the studio, blanket around my shoulders, morning light slanting across the space where grandmother and the mist sea had been now packed for a downtown year-end show. The room felt emptier, but oddly I did not. Grace called. "Dinner at my place tonight. Aaron and Kendall are coming." I hesitated. After years, a simple meal had become a light test inside me. "I'll be there." Her house glowed warm, roast chicken, buttered bread, cinnamon in the air. Aaron set the table. Kendall stirred soup at the stove. Jamie ran and hugged me. "Grandma, I'm the star of the class today." I touched his nose. "I knew it because you're brave." We sat. No one mentioned the past. Aaron talked about new patients. Grace spoke about a community project. Kendall stayed quiet, primarily sometimes looking at me and giving a slight nod, small but enough, no more apologies necessary. We were beginning to understand with a glance. Afterward, I rinsed the last few plates. Kendall stepped in with a towel. "Mom, I have news." I looked up. "I've been invited to teach part-time in communications, the impact of image on public perception." I didn't think anyone remembered me. "They don't just remember," I said gently. "They see you've changed. Really changed." "Yes. You're speaking in your own voice." "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "Just don't lose yourself again," I said. At the door, she handed me a card. "Jamie's school play is next week. Please come. He's practiced all month. I won't miss it." I smiled. Light rain fell as I drove home. On the radio, an old song from when I was young and unsure. Now it no longer felt sad, only like a circle closing whole and kind. The next morning, I went to the gallery as they hung the show. I stepped back when they lifted my canvas. The light struck the small figure standing before the sea, small but steady. It wasn't only me, every woman like me, quiet, forgotten, still upright in headwinds. A young volunteer asked, "Could you tell me what it means?" "It's the story of someone who stopped asking permission to exist," I said. "I think I understand," she murmured. In the afternoon, I stopped by Aaron's. The Queen Anne house was the same white porch, oversized windows, and nearly bare maple. He painted a door frame, humming and checking whether the house still stood. "It's fine," he grinned. "We're fine." We sat on the porch. "How are you and Kendall?" "Plenty to relearn," he said. "But at least we tell the truth now." "As long as you're still talking," I said, "there's a way back." He was quiet, then said, "I'm sorry for leaving you to bear the weight for years. I thought you were standing outside things. Now I know you took the weight so the house wouldn't fall." "No one needs to apologize for growing up," I said. "Live true, and I'll rest easy." Evening, Kendall came home coat damp with a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. "For you," she said. "Chrysanthemums know the cold like women." I smiled. "That's why you like them. I like them because they bloom without needing an audience." We laughed an easy, unguarded laugh. Back home, Thomas looked up. I hear your paintings are in the center. Something like that, I said. I'm proud of you. We sipped tea. Isn't life like a painting, I mused. Every crack, every wrong stroke contributes to the whole. He said we'd never get to the truth if nothing were wrong, if there were no wrong. Rain started again, but its sound didn't weigh me down. It felt like an old song replayed not to summon the past, but to close it. I glanced at a photo on our wall, our family at the exhibit, Grace at my side, Aaron and Kendall behind Jamie laughing with a raised hand. The image is a little foggy, but we all look the same way. Sometimes the most precious thing is not what we achieve, but who stays even after we've hurt them. I turned off the light. The city lay wet and wind-soft whispering. It's going to be all right, Evelyn. It already is. In March, Seattle surprised us with the sun. After prolonged rain, warm gold flooded the window, pooling on my old wood floor in Magnolia. Wet earth roses, opening sparrows chattering, it felt like a piece of youth had been returned long slipping past in this house. On the table lay a thank you letter from the Women and Silence organizers. My painting would tour West Coast cities, a tribute to women who speak through silence. I reread the line filled with a feeling hard to name, not pride, but a rare peace. What I had borne and hidden had turned to light for others. I made coffee and opened the window. The maple had new buds. Dew fell from branches like beads. Spring had truly returned. Morning Grace called. I'm driving to Portland next week. Come with me, make it a little getaway. I thought you were working, not vacationing. Both. Please, I said, all right, as long as I don't have to sit in a conference room. We laughed. Even her voice had changed, steady and unburdened. Not only me, but also my children were finding their own ways, no longer led by fear. In the afternoon, Aaron and Kendall brought Jamie. He carried a small wooden box of messy drawings. Look, Grandma, I painted the ocean like you. I opened it, blue-purple waves and a tiny person under the sky. Why am I so small? I teased. Because the ocean's bigger. Kendall watched us and said, I remember the first time I saw Grandmother and the mist sea. I didn't get it. Now I do. You didn't just paint the ocean, you painted life. Thank you, I said. Maybe I painted what people forget most, how loneliness can carry the color of hope. Aaron rested a hand on her shoulder. In his eyes, no tension, now only patience, understanding. After everything they had learned to stand together without harming each other. That night, Thomas took the chamomile tea I brought him. You're different lately, he said. How lighter, less worried. Like you finally forgave yourself. Maybe I smiled. Forgiving others is easier than forgiving yourself. He folded the paper. I used to think we missed each other for too many years. It turns out that we were only temporarily lost, and lucky to be found, I said. We sat in a warm, easy quiet, not the heavy hush of before. Outside, jasmine and last night's rain scented the breeze. A week later in Portland, the sky was unusually blue. While Grace was in meetings, I sat in a nearby park and opened my sketchbook, not the sea this time, but tree canopies swaying in the sun. An older woman sat beside me. Are you an artist? I draw what I'm afraid to lose, I said. I wrote, and she smiled about what I forgot. Two strangers in a city not our own, sharing a frequency of loneliness, sometimes that's all it takes. Back in Seattle, a letter from the association invited me to speak at the summer opening downtown. My heart tangled. I'd never thought I dared to stand in front of a crowd. Then I remembered Jamie's bright eyes with his painting, Kendall's voice, the years I let silence build a wall between me and the world. I nodded to myself. It's time. On that day, I wore a simple white dress and had my hair in a bun. Warm lights, a quiet hall. The mic clicked, and I heard my own heartbeat. I'm not a professional painter, I began, voice shaky. I'm a woman who lived too long in silence. Maybe each of us carries a canvas inside a place for what we've never said. The room stilled. I once thought silence kept the peace. It doesn't, it only makes us forget our voice. When I started to paint line by line, I realized I wasn't recounting the past, I was learning to touch the present. I breathed. If my painting makes even one person feel less alone, then every scar I've carried was worth it. Applause, modest, sincere. In the front row, Grace wiped tears. Kendall smiled. Aaron's hand rested on his son's shoulder. Thomas's gaze was steady and bright, the look of a man who has witnessed change without needing to speak. That night at home, I opened the window to the Puget breeze. On the table lay a blank sheet. I began a new piece, Spring in Magnolia. A woman stands on her porch with a coffee cup. A child runs through flowers. Inside, a man reads the paper and smiles. No ocean, no fog, only sunlight and a morning breathing. I set down the brush when the last line dried and stepped back. I don't know what the painting will mean to others. To me, it's an ending or a gentler beginning. Outside, the spring wind moved. Something inside me closed, not in sadness, but like a door swinging open after a prolonged rain, reminding me that